Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get started. How is everybody today? It's a little afternoon and I'm still having coffee. I haven't had my full pot yet. So how is everybody today, and did you fly today? Do you plan to fly? Are you going to fly this weekend? Happy Friday, everybody. There is a lot to talk about. Let me know if the audio is doing good for you. I'll turn that down. Looks like levels are a little high, but we should be good to go. Um, so yeah, let's jump right into it, you guys. First of all, I mean, late last night the videos started coming out on YouTube, and they just started dropping everywhere. And DJI has released a brand new drone, a modified drone, a Mini 3 with the DJI RCN1 for $559. That's a far cry cheaper than my Mini 3 Pro that I bought. And I had a feeling that they were going to release this as like the Mini 3 Classic, I thought they would call it, but they ended up calling it the Standard. Standard and Classic, what's the difference? They did a Mavic Classic, the Mavic 3 Classic, just a cheaper version of the Pro version, so more people can afford to fly these. And we're going to have to get into some specifics about what makes this one different than the other one. Primarily the flight time. They've boosted up the flight time on this one and upwards of like 51 minutes with the intelligent premium battery. So if you get the premium battery, it's going to put it over 250 grams. That's the only problem with that. Yeah, it's still pretty expensive, Johnny. If they could get these Mini 3 Pros under $500, it would be amazing. But you can buy the Mini 3 Standard now without the RCN1 controller. If you just want to fly it off of your phone or the DJI controller, it would be cheaper than having the full screen. Because I believe it will pair up now with the FPV controller too. Yeah, the DJI prices are crazy right now. Shipping is not really helping anybody. It's expensive to ship. But this is still about $600 cheaper than what I spent to get my Mini 3 Pro for our trip to France. So, I mean, it's saving a lot of people a lot of money, and it has, you know, longer flight time on this one, so that's good news. I'm not sure how they did that. They must have went with a little lower KV motors. So we're happy that DJI has released that, and it seems that DJI has been really hard at work this week, in the past couple weeks, with all of the updates across the board. We have updates on just about everything, including the DJI O3. The DJI O3 has new firmware, and a lot of guys are asking right now. You guys are concerned with this. You're wondering if the DJI O3 Air units are going to have remote ID built into them, and the answer is, for now, no, because the DJI O3 is a component. It is not a full ready to fly takeoff drone. So I don't think at this point we have to worry about having remote ID on the DJI O3 modules and camera, because it's a VTX, a DVR, and a camera. So yeah. Captain Caligray asks, is there any footage of the GoPogo? Do you mean GoPro? So Yeah, they're expensive across the board. Everything's expensive right now. But I think with these, you guys need to know about these new firmware updates. Okay, let me turn that volume up for you just a little bit. There we go. Um, so yeah, DJI released a firmware update for the O3, and that doesn't add remote ID to it. But if you have a DJI Avata, which I have two of them, I'm not going to update mine right now because I don't want to add this new feature that adds remote ID. And it's not that I don't want to add remote ID to my Avata. The thing that I don't like is that we have to add the phone. So now the volume's too high. You guys just turn your stuff up or down. Every computer is different. Every set of speakers is different. So I'm going to leave it right in the middle. The volume's right in the middle. So it's funny. The internet's crazy, crazy place. Everybody's using different devices, phones, and whatnot. So, you know, with what we're dealing with remote ID, it's not the end of the world. If it's like a consumer drone from Best Buy, and it comes ready with remote ID, just go ahead and register it, set it up, and then you can go out and fly where you want to fly. It's not the network ID. It's going to be broadcast. So they're saying you don't have to have an internet connection, so you can pretty much fly anywhere in the world. Well, in the U.S., where we're liable for remote ID coming up September 2023. You know, if you don't want remote ID, you're going to have to do, you know, DIY type builds. And at the current time, I don't think that, you know, it's gonna you know, be on the O3. So if you update the Avata, you now have to have your phone connected to the Avata to take off. No matter where you're flying your Avata, indoors or outdoors, you have to connect. The cable now has to be connected to your goggles and to the phone. So that's one thing. Yeah, I am in a rainforest actually. So the other firmware update is for the controller, and the controller number 2, the FPV controller 2, the small gray one, will now work with the Caddx Vista and the O3. DIY means do it yourself, like build up your own quad. That's the only way to get around remote ID at this point. And with the FPV controller 2, we had problems before with the last firmware update, because if you lost the camera feed, all of a sudden you would lose the link feed to the drone for 5 seconds. That's a lot of time to lose your drone. So it would be on the ground by that point before it came back. So they updated that, and now that problem should be fixed. Now, one of the other things, if you know, there's firmware updates for DJI across the board. There are the O3 updates, there's the Caddx Vista updates, there's a Link update from RunCam, and there's the original Air unit, which I still love. It has 2 antenna option on the back, like the new O3, and it has a 1080p DVR. But the problem is that with the new firmware update for your Air unit, once you update it, it will no longer, there's 2 things here, actually 3 things. It will no longer work with your V2 goggles, it will no longer work with V1 goggles, and it disables the DVR. The 1080p DVR is disabled. So we're losing some function, and we're gaining to be able to use them with the goggles too. If you don't own the goggles too, I don't suggest updating it. And I was talking to somebody last night on social media. They said they're not going to update anything. They're just going to leave it like it is and fly it just like that. So unless you have the goggles too, I wouldn't do it. And I'm just gonna put you guys in an intermission for a second, and I'll be back in 1 second. All right, I'm back. I had to get my coffee refill going. So, Shallow23 asks about a good, inexpensive GPS that's good with Betaflight. The BN220 works great. Also, the M8 GPS works good. It's a smaller format GPS. You can get some of these GPS. You used to be able to get them for around $15. But once you hook that up to your flight controller, you should be able to have GPS return to home. And now Betaflight has an auto landing feature, which is super cool. So some of the other DJI firmware updates that are happening is the V2 goggles working with the O3. You can now update the V2 goggles and the V1 goggles. So let's get a poll going in the room. I'd like to know how many of you guys did update the new DJI firmware on anything, on your Avata, the Goggles 2, the Caddx Vistas, the O3. Did you guys update any of that stuff? Let me know if you did do that update. Because at this point, I'm not updating anything. Yeah, it's super nice, Shadow, that the Betaflight update 4.3 is looking good with GPS return to home, and it actually auto lands now, which it used to just come back and hover over the home point, and then you'd have to take back control or wait till the battery dies if you lost total link, like if one of your wires popped off your RX. Okay, Killer B says he updated his Avata, so at this point, Killer B, you probably have remote ID on yours, and you're gonna have to hook up the phone. So at this point, it's someone else was saying on social media last night, analog is looking pretty good these days, because with analog FPV, if you're brand new to my channel and you're brand new to flying drones and FPV is brand new to you, some people don't even know what FPV means, first person view, but if you're brand new to the channel, analog video doesn't require any updates. And you know, Mr. Steele has been flying the same type of setup for several years. He hasn't updated a whole lot of his gear. He just finally switched it over to HD, flying his daily driver drone. And so if you have some gear that works, a lot of times the consensus is if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Oh, I love the Caddx Ratel with Starlight. That's awesome. So the firmware updates across the board, it looks like most people are not going to do that update, and I can't say I blame you there. But let's go back to the web here. So yeah, remote ID is definitely coming up faster than a lot of people realize. A lot of people think that it's the end of the hobby, and my opinion is I don't think it's the end of the hobby. And the good news, guys, is the fact that when these companies start producing drones, there are certain components and pieces that they'll be able to take off the drone to make it more of a DIY type setup, where If it's not ready to fly out of the box, then they don't have to put the remote ID on there from the manufacturer. And that's still all up in the air what that component might be. It might be a receiver, it might be the VTX, but a lot of you guys know how to put stuff on these custom build drones. So for Gep RC and iFlight, Darwin FPV, other companies like that that are producing bind and flies, there might be something there that they can remove and just include it in a separate box, and then bam, there you go. And you'll have a way to be able to solder on the remote ID module if you want to. But for the ready to fly drones over 250 grams, like Amazon drones and things like that, will have to now come with, US versions will have to come with our remote ID modules. And you know, size is going to be kind of a limiting factor still. They tried to make it as small as they could for us, but it's not small enough to be on a lot of sub 100 gram drones. So any of your whoops and things like that, they're not going to have remote ID on that. If you're a commercial flyer and you need a whoop with 4K on it to do a certain shot, I don't know what you're going to do there unless you do it indoors. Because indoors is not FAA's jurisdiction. So that's all coming up by September 2023, and that's for all pilots. That's for hobbyists and for professionals. Now, if you guys have any questions about remote ID or the DJI firmware updates, drop them in the chat. I appreciate the super chat earlier too, Shadow. I appreciate you. Thank you. And I apologize today. I was a little late on the stream because I had a super important phone call that I've been waiting on since yesterday. It came in right at 12 o'clock. Right at 12 o'clock. It was one of those calls you can't not answer. So Steve asked if is he going to be forced to update the Avata. I don't believe you're going to be forced to update your Avata. Your goggles too should bind right up to the Avata. It may give you a warning. It comes across the screen and you can say skip. You should be able to say skip it for Steve-O. Is that Steve-O from California? Steve-O's Wild Ride? He's got a cool YouTube channel now. So remote ID rollout, it's already happening. It's December 2022 and it's already happening. But the good news is we had a great ending to this year. You know, 2023 is just about here. We're coming up on the new year, and I started to think about halfway through this year, back in the summertime, I was thinking, man, FPV has kind of plateaued, and everyone was talking about the innovation was kind of just leveling off. And then DJI came out with this O3 system this fall, and all of a sudden, HD 0 as well, and walk snail. So we got like 3 different HD systems that are reliable for us now. And the walk snail is great, HD 0, and there's just a lot of things to choose from right now. And if you were going to ask me my opinion on which HD system to get, I would say go for the DJI one, because eventually they'll have a micro size nano unit, maybe not with a DVR, but they'll come out with something if the demand is there. I mean, the whoop community is not super big, but then again, FPV is very niche. So they've actually, I still find it amazing that they make updates and they make FPV things for our community, because really there's not a lot of people that fly FPV. So you guys are a rare breed. So I think it's super cool that they do make stuff for FPV community. That's like you know, for GoPro to recognize us, which they finally are starting to do. I mean, DJI is just looking for other, you know, honestly, they're looking for other revenue sources. So Air Tier Modeler asked about the DJI FPV drone. I have not checked mine. I have one. That's a part of our giveaway this year. I'm gonna give that to somebody on the channel. But I will check that for you, and I can let you know in the community post on the YouTube channel. And Shadow Op said anything that flies. You know, it's probably universal across the board. So I feel good where we're at now. I feel good with FPV and the direction, the HD. We've leveled up with the goggles too. You know, I had to go and buy those with my own money because DJI still doesn't send me stuff for review, which I wish they would get on board with that. We just keep sending them letters and emails, trying to contact them. And we've got Mrs. Camps on it as well, so she's trying to contact them too, to get them to come over to the channel, because we do a lot of DJI content, and always have. I do love the company, so I feel good about FPV where we're at. And I'm excited that 1080p FPV is now, like, it's a reality. Isn't that cool? I mean, it's really cool. We can put a DJI O3 on an FPV plane now, and with the new update, we have full OSD. I don't know that it works with iNav yet, but I'm not running iNav right now, so I think that's going to be an update later, hopefully. But canvas mode is nice, very nice. I was telling a friend of mine that flies long range, a couple days ago I called him on the phone, and we were talking about canvas mode. He doesn't have any DJI systems yet, but he's about to hopefully pull the trigger on that around the new year, since DJI O3 has come out. But you know, my question with DJI O3 is this gonna work out through the spring and summer next year with, I mean, basically the world's two hottest devices. Like, DJI stuck the two hottest devices inside a tiny little black box. A 4K camera DVR gets super crazy hot, and a VTX together. That's a hot couple right there. So, and they're just burning each other up. So they really need to release a physical fan on top of it. So, you know, my recommendation to you guys that really know how to build and know what you're doing is get one of the RC car fans. If you're doing a long range 7-inch or something that's going to fly for over 20 minutes in the heat, and all the airflow on a hot summer day might not matter. You might need airflow right on top of that module to keep it from blacking out on you. And we're going to have to test that. We're going to be the beta flyers in spring and summer with the O3s. No one knows yet because they released it in the fall, right? They released it in the coldest month of the year, November, December. So that's all up in the air, what those modules are going to do. Yeah, it would be nice to have the O3 on an RC car or a crawler. That would be nice. Super nice in the backyard on a little course with some 1080p FPV. I'm all about the goggles too. I love them. So one of the things that I also love, guys, is this. If you're gonna buy a cinewhoop right now, 100% hands down, this guy is I love it. This is the Gep RC Cinebot with the DJI O3 on board, and we also have TBS Crossfire. This one is my pick right now for cinewhoop. Or get yourself the Cadex Vista version. they did a lot right here. And there seems to be an issue that Nick Burns found out, something to do with a zero throttle tumble. So when you get your stick all the way down to zero throttle, it goes into a tumble. And they were talking about a fix for that. So he has a video for a fix for that. So if you already have a Cinebot and you've experienced that problem, that tumble at zero throttle, go and check out his video on the thrust linearization. And that's a setting inside Betaflight. Now the original one here, so we got twins here. This is the Cadex version, and the frames are virtually the same, for the exception of the camera size. The O3 is much wider, larger, but what I like about these cameras versus something like the Foxeer one that we just reviewed this week, it has a fully shrouded aluminum camera shroud on here. So that's major for if you're going to do freestyle or you hit something head on. The other camera that I flew, I broke the ring that holds the lens in place. There's a tiny ring behind here, and that allows you to move the camera out, in and out, and focus it. And once it gets focused, you can tighten that ring up. Well, that hit the tree and it broke that ring. So as I was flying my next flight, everything started to get blurry and the camera loosened up. The lens loosened up out of the camera body. So that wasn't good. And the O3 is not really susceptible to that. But I was talking to someone recently that had an O3 that was having some jello issues. And we were going back and forth in some emails, and one of my Patreons, and we couldn't figure out the problem. And I think he got a new O3, and then it was something to do with using BL Heli S. So if you're using BL Heli S and you have an O3 on your DIY quad, your home built one, then somewhere that frequency interrupts and causes the video to produce jello, and that's just wavy lines. And we tried new props, we tried tightening up the motors. Alex asked if you need to put remote ID on a 3D stunt helicopter. Yes, you do. You do have to do that. Even RC airplanes, anything over 250 grams, or anything commercial. So that's a really strange issue that I haven't heard talked about in the forums or on social media. Nobody's talking about BL Heli S causing problems. Now, most of you guys are not using BL Heli S. It's kind of an older ESC firmware for people who don't know what that is, but that's very strange that frequency, and once he changed the frequency, the jello went away from the O3, which is kind of amazing. So you guys need to know about that. I wouldn't suggest using BL Heli S on your ESCs if you're using the DJI O3, or you're going to have problems. So that's some good information for you guys to know. But this one, the O3 version of the Cinebot, both of these right here are absolutely the best two cinewhoops for the year. They get quad of the year in the cinewhoop category. Now, we can take a look at my favorite 5-inch. Let's check out my favorite 5-inch. And you guys can check out some of these links in the video description for the live stream, because I did put links to all these drones that we're checking out today. And this, my friends, is the most amazing 5-inch out there right now. This is the iFlight Nazgul Evoke version. with O3 on there. And I got a ton of new props to test for you guys in the mail this week. I got a giant box from HQ. So I want to say thanks to HQ for sending out some new props to test out. Razor asked if I think they'll make a Cinebot 25. Absolutely, I think they will. So in the props that I'm talking about, R36 props, and these are HQs. They're looking super thin and really nice. And these are all prototype props. So here's an example of this prop. So we've got a super narrow mid cord, really tight on the ends, and pretty standard around the hub, but not a whole lot of pitch. So it's going to be a fairly low pitch prop, but really sexy looking prop there. And these are new coming out from HQ. So you're seeing a brand new prop. And yeah, we've got a whole bunch of props to test. So I might end up coming out with a video soon on some of those new props. We can't probably test them all because it's a giant box. Let me know what props you're flying right now. If you have a favorite, maybe I can test them out. But this guy, you know, a lot of people are asking, can you still freestyle with the DJI O3 on board because it has more lag? I'm able to, but then again, I'm not doing super high maneuver stuff. Like, I mean, I do some pretty fast stuff, but I try not to go too hard so I don't break stuff. There's also a version of this with the longer antennas. So if you guys are gonna grab a Nazgul Evoke V2 with O3 on board, I would suggest getting the one with the longer posts. These two posts, I feel like maybe they just threw these in the box because I don't see them advertising it with these anymore. Maybe because some of the reviewers mentioned these. They're a little bit short, and once you put a good size 6S, say 1300 on board, you know, your battery's going to be over top of your antennas back there. So that's not going to be the best setup, in my opinion. So I'm happy today that we're not seeing spammers in the chat. I don't want to invite them in, but man, there's been a lot of the sexy girls chat spammers in the last couple live streams. But this is my favorite dead cat version, and I would get the dead cat version because you don't see the props in view. Just the true X version, you're going to see the props in view. And with an O3, you don't want that. So I don't even know that they made an X version of the Evoke V2 with O3 on board. Not that I've seen. But what do you guys think about that? Let me know in the chat what you think about this model. I think it's cool. You know, you can still fly a GoPro on it if you're one of those cinema guys. I still think GoPro is better. If you ask me which is better, O3 or the GoPro for cinema, I would say GoPro is better. Razor is asking if it's hard to work on this. Razor, I would say no. It's 8-bolt release on the top plate, and once you take these 8 bolts off, it's really easy to get down to the flight controller. It's a 20x20 stack F7 Blitz, and it's super easy to add an RX on there. If you want to add TBS Crossfire, you can also add GPS to these flight controllers. These do not come with GPS on the back, at least mine didn't, but they do have a spot for it. So when you want to add it on there, it goes right onto these two posts right here. They're already there for you, and you just need to run your wire inside right through here. Back here we've got the bind button on this side. Might be able to see that. There you go. So the bind button's here. And I always recommend using a bamboo skewer on these. On this side we have the 4K DVR for the SD card slot right there. And what I love about the O3s, guys, if you don't know this, like, you might be under a rock, but it does have 20 gigabytes of internal storage, so you don't have to have an SD card. So a lot of times when I'm going out to fly, I'm not a cinema guy, so I always forget an extra SD card, and it's nice that this O3 has built-in memory. That is super cool. USB-C port right there, that's for your firmware updates, of course. But black, why do they make it black? I don't understand why they made it black. I wish it was silver, because black attracts more heat. And what we're trying to do here is reduce heat. But iFlight is smart, because if you look closely here, you see underneath right through here. And it's hard, the props are hitting the camera, but you can see these teeth right here. That is a custom heat sink on the bottom. And I haven't seen other companies doing that yet, but this is going to be crucial in the hotter months. And I guess it doesn't matter if they put it on the top or the bottom. I would have preferred to see it on top, because what happens to hot air? Hot air rises, right? So, but maybe it's just extracting it and pulling it down through here. But it does appear to go up through the frame and touch the bottom of the O3 there. But nice looking quad, larger camera mount on the front, and probably one of my best choices for a 5-inch O3 this year. Just everyone loves it. These do, Shadow asked if they get hot on a warm day. They get pretty hot. And every time that I've flown my O3, when it lands, I put my hand back there and I touch it and feel it. And it's recorded in 4K and it's running 700 milliwatt on the VTX side of things. So, it's gonna feel hot. It doesn't feel so hot that it's gonna burn me, but it's alarmingly hotter than what I'm used to. It feels hotter than some of the other VTXs that I've flown. But that's what happens that's physics. You cram like a 4K and a VTX together in one little tiny box on top of each other, the two hottest electronic components, you're going to get some crazy heat. So the let's talk about the next thing in the lineup here. I'm going to set the Evoke to the side. One of my favorite releases this year. This is kind of like a little recap of the last couple months. November, December, the best of the best. Sitting right over here in this black box. I'm going to show you guys this. Now, if you're going to fly long range, we talk about long range a lot on the channel. We show different long range quads, 7-inch, in all sizes, all the way down to the tiny whoops. But my favorite module right now, the Ranger. I mean, can we get some applause for Radio Master for making the Ranger? This works with the TX16S and any radio running OpenTX. We now have this high-powered ELRS module with diversity antenna receivers. These are beautiful. You got this patch style antenna here. This is called the Maxon 2.4 MA24, this one, and we have this one as well. And this one is on a brand new prototype that I got from Radio Master that I mentioned we would talk about some new prototypes in this live stream. I can't tell you which ones they are, but I am testing new stuff from Radio Master as well outside these. So this is super cool. And this module is beautifully made. It feels nicer in my hands than my full-size TBS Crossfire module. It has an all aluminum case, which is great because that's great for, pulling heat. It's like a giant heat sink, this whole thing. This whole case around, this whole module right here is helping you dissipate all this heat. So you can crank this thing all the way up to 2 watt. And this antenna can screw on top. You're not supposed to turn these on, by the way, without having the antenna on them, because you'll have a problem. And you can also turn this. Once it's screwed down, it can rotate like this. So it's really nice. It has a push button in the middle, like Crossfire. You can move this around, take a little joystick, push it down to make a selection, and 2 other LEDs there. Built-in fan. See, this is what the DJI Air O3 should have on it. Now, yeah, Radio Master was smart to put this encase this entire thing in aluminum. And I don't think my Crossfire module is aluminum like this one. So that's really smart. There's like venting on the very top up here. No venting in the bottom or on the sides, but you do have this entire physical fan on the front, which is really nice. You can do external power with the XT30 here. Firmware updates with the USB-C. So they also include this, and this is a nano connection. So it looks like we could take this off of the back, this JR module support bay. You pull this off, put this one on there, and then you can put it on your smaller radio. So if you have a game style controller, you can put this giant module on your game style controller with this. And I love that they included both in the box. So you have the option for the big radios and the small radios. You can totally blast it with these. And this one says Ranger Nano V 1.4. It's just 3 screws there, plugs into the back of this module, and bam, you're able to use your game style controller. Johnny D says he's still using an X9D Crossfire. Hey, so am I, Johnny. I'm still using Crossfire Nano, and I love it. So the Ranger is cool. I mean, and for the price too, it's $100, and it will absolutely get you the same range as anything Crossfire makes, anything TBS Crossfire makes. So they have some pretty big competition with this. I didn't really think that ELRS was competing that much with TBS the past 6 months, but Wesley and those guys over at ELRS are really making some big moves with firmware updates. They're constantly coming out with new updates. They just came out with one yesterday that adds a bunch more functionality to ELRS. So constant updates on that, and it's community supported. So TBS Crossfire it's not open source, whereas ELRS is, and that to some people matters. And so probably my biggest love of the year, my most coveted drone of all time right now. You want to see it? Can anybody in the chat guess what my absolute favorite drone is right now? Just take a guess. It's sitting on the bench. Which one do you think it is? I'm going to show you my all-time favorite drone for 2022. Some of you may already know what it is. Who wins the award for Quad of the Year? I would say over all the quads. You guys know me pretty well. The guys that are in the chat right now know me pretty well. So, um, yeah, this guy is ridiculously awesome. $799. It seems like a lot, and someone was saying, man, like that's a lot of money for a 7-inch. But this is getting up toward the level of quality like the higher end $1,000 plus iFlight cinema drones. If you go look at the Cinelifter series, this is one step away from a Cinelifter. This drone will lift a lot. Yeah, QX7. I still have a QX7. That controller still works for me. I had a white one. Hey, what's up? Welcome back, Yak. So, this is an expensive, a pretty expensive drone. On the Banggood website, there's all the new releases right there right now that everyone's hot on. Darwin FPV also has a Cinebot competitor coming out as well. Around it looks like $300 price point. The analog version is $139. So yeah, your neighbors would freak out if they saw this hovering over their house. I don't know what happened to my my live view there with the camera. There we go. It's back. Just momentarily disconnected. So this guy right here, people were asking me what the range is on this. I would say you could do 6 miles out and back with this drone easily. It also comes with super tall antennas, and this is the same type of setup back here as on the Nazgul Evoque V2, but they have it covered back here. So this is going to be more robust for crashes. So on the Evoque, it sticks out, and with this one, they have the side plate frame going in front of the O3. They also have the heat sink on the bottom as well. So they have the heat sink built into the bottom to help pull some of that hot air out of there. But dual antenna setup, super long posts for these antennas, stick up way above the drone for the maximum distance. We've got, I believe it was a BN220 on the back for GPS back here. That does not come set up, so you have to set it up and do a field test with this. And don't flip into return to home with this unless you're 300 feet or more away from yourself, because inside the 300-foot radius it'll drop to the ground. They may have fixed that in a firmware update, but the last time I was testing, those would drop to the ground within 300 feet. Otherwise it'll come back and fly to home. Yeah, super clean setup, Barry. I just wish that iFlight would stop doing this reverse backwards plug on an angle like this, because it forces you to bring your battery further back, offsetting the CG. Even with their own battery that they have, the full SIN 6S Lion, it's about that big. Yep. It would sit right in the middle of the frame, but I need to extend the wires to have it in the middle of the frame because the wire's too short, so it makes me put the battery back here. And with the O3, if you're not running a GoPro up front, your CG is going to be totally off. You can't fly your 7-inch with the battery sitting way back here. So that's kind of a thing that I wish they would work on. But I can run a 4S pack on here as well. You can run 4S 5000 pack on this drone and get close to 20 minutes flight time. You can use HV or regular LiPo. If you want to freestyle, use a LiPo. If you want to fly long range, use a Lion. You cannot freestyle with Lions, guys, for the new guys. They don't handle high amp draw, and if you pull high amps off of a Lion, it'll cause you some big problems. Like it black out your camera system. With a LiPo, it can handle high amp draw, but if you go too high, a lot of times what happens is your battery starts to swell. So you get there's a happy medium with your throttle. But LiPos can take a lot more high throttle abuse, which I usually do. But I love seeing this quad now with the iFlight logo up front. No GoPro mount on there. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice and clean? No GoPro, no action camera. This is the FPV drone aesthetic that I've loved for years, and I've never been a fan of flying GoPros on any of my quads because it changes the performance. That much weight up front. I've bottomed out quads, hit the ground on power loops, things like that, and then you have the GoPro flying off the quad. I mean, it's just a nightmare. This is going to be way more sturdy, and your unit back here is way more protected. So even if you blew out your camera, your DVR is still back here. It'd be hard to break the DVR. I don't know what you'd have to do to break the O3 DVR. Crash in water maybe. But if you break the camera up front, you're replacing just the camera, which you can do. You can buy the camera by itself. Now somebody had to let me know in the chat if that's available yet, but it's probably available only in the set. So they'll release the parts soon on these, I hope. Other good news for you guys is the fact that they are releasing, if you already have a Chimera 7, like guys in chat, if you have one, let me know. If you already have a Chimera 7, they're releasing a mod kit for your current Chimera 7 V2 to be able to have this front end on here. So you can convert it to the O3 now. So they are releasing that kit. That is really good news for guys. That's super good news. I'm stoked about that because tons of people are asking me when or will it fit, will the O3 fit? And I told a bunch of people no, it won't fit. But now you can get these parts and upgrade it when you get around to it. I would suggest it if you don't want to run a GoPro. If you just want to cruise and have 1080p FPV, get the goggles too with this, man, that's the freaking premium setup right there. TBS crossfire, GPS return to home, all the bells and whistles. And you know what's great about this too is with the DJI goggles too, I feel like a lot of the in quotations DJI guys, the big argument to me when I was flying even the super fastest, raddest FPV drone in history, maybe something like the Catalyst Machine Works America. If I was flying that somewhere and someone in the park was like, "Oh man, can I see through your goggles?" and I'd show them, and even with the best like Cadex Ratel or Foxeer cameras, people would still see my FPV feed, especially the DVR, and they'd be like, "Man, that's shit. That looks like crap compared to my DJI on my phone. That feed is much better." And I had to explain that it's a different system. And now with the goggles 2 and the O3, that feed looks just as good as their phone now, with the OLED inside the goggles too. So that's really good news for me. I don't have to hear some whining about the way analog looks versus their DJI Mavic with an iPad. I mean, of course, that's going to look better. But they're not flying 100 miles an hour either. It's funny how that whole thing was an issue with the DJI community and FPV for so many years, and now we're at the point where the O3 with 1080p looks just as good as the phones. But that's a lot of good stuff at the end of the year. I'm happy with what iFlight has done. They came out of nowhere, and I'm also happy and I have to show you this before I forget. These motors, they're 1250 kV motors. So they knew that you guys wanted the longest flight time with this 7-inch. These are the Zing V2s. They knew that you guys wanted a long flight time and that this was going to be a pure long range drone. It's not necessarily a 7-inch freestyle rig. This is a straight up longest flight time type of setup. Under 1300 kV is going to be the best for long flights. If you get up to 1750 kV with a 7-inch motor setup, that's going to be more for like performance and like freestyle capability. It's going to give you a little shorter flight times. It's amazing that that much kV makes that much of a difference. But don't those 7-inch props look gigantic? They look huge, super huge. So I'm just going to look through the chat and see if I missed anything in there. William said, your footage on that looks amazing. Thanks. Appreciate that. That was the perfect day. And it was the perfect timing for that video to happen. What happened was it was pouring down rain all day, and I was trying viciously on the bench to try to get this set up. And I was having to update everything. I was having to get the goggles bound up, the radio working, the channel maps moving inside Betaflight, all that stuff. And I just got it set up as fast as I could, and I ran out for the maiden. And that was the maiden on this quad that day. You guys got to see the maiden flight. Yeah, 1100 kV, that's good right there, Johnny D. You know what's up for a long flight time. Low kV, guys, on 7-inch. Low kV. Above 1500, it's going to be more performance motor. And you don't usually ever see 7-inch motor doing 2000 plus. So if you see a 7-inch motor that has 2450 kV, avoid that. And also you want to be running 6S on your for the longest flight time, 6S. But again, you can run 4S on a 6S motor. You just won't have as much power at the high end of the throttle. It will still fly great. You won't even notice it, actually. Wow, you only got 2 minutes on your 1500 LiPo. I've never flown a 1500 LiPo on a 7-inch. I know some guys that fly like 2650 milliamp on 7-inch, but I just go all the way to 4000 milliamp plus on these. If you can find a battery that you can afford, Johnny, I would get 4000 to 5000 milliamp. I would almost say with the new O3, you could probably stick a. I want to try 5200. There's a company that makes some Lion 6S 5200s. I'd like to give that a shot. Most of my batteries are old right now too. Tattoo, if you're listening, I need some new batteries. I'm trying to get with those guys. Some of my R-lines are some of the best batteries I've ever flown, and they last for years, even with the way I fly. Sometimes I'm trying to just get some good video before I completely kill the battery. Yeah, you can totally use 4S. So other releases that we have coming up, speaking of 7-inch, and I waited till we got to this point, is these new motors. You guys have to check these out. Let me show you these. These are from Foxeer, and Foxeer's, man, they've been killing it lately. I love that Foxeer is making quads now. They used to make some frames and stuff back in the day, and mostly they made cameras and flight controllers. But they started out doing a lot of cameras, and they make excellent cameras. But these are the Datura series motors that I just got in, and this one hasn't even been open. We'll open it up. This is a 2805 motor, 2806.5, 1750 kV. Let's check these out. These are beautiful. Got some M3 bolts in there. Got a hollow core shaft on there. Nice anodized blue aluminum. It's almost the same blue as, just a little lighter than what's on the Zing 2 series motors. But the Zing 2s are larger. At 2805 and 2806. And these are just a little shorter. Like in comparison, these guys are beastie. So just a little bit shorter. And this aluminum, it's so close in color. These are just a little lighter. But I've flown a lot of these Datura motors in all the different sizes. These are 2806.5, 1750, and you know, I wish they were lower. But this is what they made for their 7-inch options. But they look super nice. Really nice coils in there. Thick copper coils. Nice low profile mount on the bottom. And fairly low profile motor. It's a little wider than tall, which is cool. Nice looking motors. Extra long wires, of course, for a 7-inch. Yeah, this could work on a 3D plane for sure. You could put a pretty large prop on this. You probably put an 8-inch prop, get away with an 8-inch prop on this, which would totally be great for a 3D plane. Now the other thing they came out with for the 7-inch crowd, they're thinking about you guys, which is cool, is they came out with this F722 flight controller. And I love the F7. This is the V4 version. Comes with these rubber standoffs across the top. Kind of a nice layout in the package. Very clean looking board. And I like to see pads with the hole through, so I can drop the wire through and solder. It's just a little more secure if you do it like that. And this one is an HD flight controller, so it has a harness option on here for plugging in your DJI O3. I just dropped it. I believe they're using Japanese MOSFET on this as well. And I love to see that, you know, things are labeled. You might not be able to see it on camera, but they are labeled, thank God. There's a few flight controllers out there, I won't name any names, Ishin. With the Tyro series, recently I had to really do a lot of kind of hit and miss figuring out when we did our latest tutorial to see where even the camera signal tab was. USB-C, of course. This is a 30 by 30, and they don't make them any smaller for the 7-inch builds, but you could put this on a 5-inch. And going along with this flight controller, we have the Reaper ESCs. I believe they were 45 amp. But some super nice gear. There's a lot more stuff to test too, guys. And I gotta give you guys some fun news there. I also have a prototype from Emax that I'm testing that you guys are gonna absolutely love. So hopefully you get some Christmas money, because Emax has some really cool stuff coming down the pipe. just to make you aware of that. Get ready for that one. And this is the Ranger Micro. And so if you want long range, but you want like something that's cost effective, I think these are under $50, and this will still get you out 5 miles plus. And this one also has that T-style antenna, USB 30 support for external battery, and honestly, if I didn't get stuff for free, I would probably buy this one over the more expensive Ranger. I mean, for what most of us are going to do, this is absolutely fine. But what you might not be able to see on camera is that this front part here, not only does it have a real fan inside there for keeping it cool, this top plate right here feels like aluminum. I may be wrong, but it feels different than the side plate. It may be aluminum, so it might serve as a giant heat sink as well. Tons of venting in this one as well. And you could probably get the micro adapter for this one if you wanted to make this one fit onto your game style controller. But honestly, at that point, you just get the nano. They have a nano version of this as well. So 3 releases in that Ranger series: the nano, the micro, and the largest Ranger. So that's the nano, the micro, and the Ranger. And you can get these in ELRS, and you can get 4-in-1. At least this one says RN 4-in-1. So maybe this is the 4-in-1 version. But Radio Master just killing it this year. Yeah, it's nice quality coming out of Radio Master. When they first came out with the TX16, it was kind of a jumper T16 killer, and we haven't heard a whole lot from Jumper since Radio Master dropped into the scene, because over a year ago now, Jumper was rolling the pool with the 4-in-1s, and Radio Master just wasn't even on our radar. They weren't out yet, and Owen came in strong with Radio Master. So all the stuff coming from them is worked great for me. I still use my TX16S Max with all my custom upgrades on it. You can now get your pilot name engraved into the on-off button, which is super cool. But if you guys have some questions about anything FPV related, please do drop them in the chat. Right now it's almost 1:30 West Coast time, so I got enough time for a couple more questions, and I'm gonna have to run. Bill, you can put just about anything on the Skywalker. I love all of the series planes. Skywalker, my twin dream. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Get your questions in there. If you have any last minute questions, I gotta run. Hey, Defiant, you're fine with Crossfire. If you already have Crossfire, don't worry about ELRS right now. Just fly what you got. I'm a big fan of fly what you got. If it works, it works. If the firmware works for you, don't upgrade it. Speaking of DJI firmwares, I would hold off on those until they fix some of the things that the community's concerned with. But we're heading in a good direction, you guys. We're heading in a fun direction. Everything is really cool right now. With the 7-inch releases, the Cinebot series, the new Nazgul Evoke with the O3s, and we have a Mark V coming out as well. that's already on GetRC's website. They have a very limited stock of those right now, so I'd hold off on ordering that. That's why I didn't really talk about that much today. It's kind of still in the manufacturing process, so they only have a couple of those units. But Mark V will be available as a competitor to the Nazgul Evoke V2. So that's cool. I know there's a lot of Mark V fans out there. Unused FPV items, you can go to our Facebook page. We have a Drone Camps FPV Community Facebook page. If you look up Drone Camps FPV Community, that's the name of our page. Sign up with that, and you can make classified posts there. And there's a little over 3,000 people there, but they're very active, and it's a really friendly place to hang out, post questions, post daily flight videos and things like that. Watch other people's flight videos. It's a really friendly place, as well as my channel, and all you guys, super friendly. I appreciate all you guys. This is my life, and this is what I do, guys. This is my full-time gig, and I don't beg much on the channel. I don't constantly beg like some of them do. But if you want to be my Patreon, thank you. And I got some stuff to add to our drone store. You can check out our drone store. It's dronecamps.com. And that's where you won't see a lot of stuff on there. I don't add a bunch of trash to it. I add like the good stuff on there. So you'll see really good stuff come through there. And if it's not something that's super great, I'll put a good deal on it. If it's a really hot item, it might be a little more. But that's because everybody wants it. So somebody's gonna pay me what I want for it. I don't have to. I don't have to beg. Too proud to beg. But Merry Christmas, guys. Happy Hanukkah. Hanukkah's coming up as well. Happy Kwanzaa, if that's your thing. Happy whatevers, right? I think I saw something recently in a store that said happy whatever. Happy whatever. That's what I should say to people when I'm out at the checkout. Happy whatever. But yeah, 8 years running on the channel, guys. Still going strong, and I still love it just as much today as when I was 12 years old. Thanks, Defiant. Appreciate that. Happy holidays to all you guys. We're going to go get a Christmas tree tomorrow. We still haven't got our Christmas tree, but I've been crazy busy and so much going on. A lot of testing coming up. Tons of prototypes in. So the first of the year is going to be pretty fun. So stay tuned, and if you're not subscribed on the channel, please do, because yeah, we have some fun stuff coming up. Planes, cars. The only thing we don't do is trains. I don't know why I would do trains. But take care, everybody. And I will see you on the next one, okay? Merry Christmas again. I'll let you know in the community chat when the next live stream is coming up. So please do subscribe, like, share, and comment on this video if you enjoy this information and the new FPV news.